Fuck you!
Okay, hello, welcome to Cuckistan, aka Canada, where free speech is dead, our Prime Minister cries over everything except two Canadians being beheaded, shows off his socks, will likely let you have sex with his wife as long as he can watch, and the Ontario and the Canadian Human Rights Tribunals, aka the 1984 Thought Police. We have an exciting new case this month, being the month of January, where the patriarchy has struck again, and it's got to be struck down. And this involves the OPP versus civilian employees of the OPP, who are all women who have all been victimized, and, well, they need help. And God damn it, the government's going to do that help for them. Now, just to clarify, the OPP is the Ontario Provincial Police. It's the largest police service in the province. So, sit back, relax, grab yourself a 10-finger scotch, and let's rock and roll. Now, anybody who knows me knows that I have a deep hatred for the Gestapo, aka Human Rights Tribunal, and the Commission. You might say, well, what's the problem? Why do you hate it so much? And the problem is a couple things. One, it's become this method for which people can just basically claim they're a victim, go to the government, and say, I've been victimized so much that I need a cash settlement. Not an apology, not say, oh, a promise of someone being retrained in something, but no, cash. And by golly, if you are found guilty of being anti-progressive, they're going to give it to you hard. They're going to have a big shit-eating grin on their face, and you're getting it from behind. No lube, no spit, just a 50 grit sandpaper condom, and you best be prepared to take it. And you know, the problem is, it's not even big businesses or corporations that are getting hammered that are going to be having thousands of dollars of fines levied against them. We're talking about small business owners, landlords renting out their basement, comedians. These are the ones that are getting hit hard the worst. So let's have a look at this. Female OPP employees say they're being paid far less than uniformed police during the same work. All right. So clearly there are no male civilian employees within the OPP. More than 80 OPP civilian managers and specialists have filed a human rights complaint claiming they are paid less than uniformed male officers for similar work. Clearly there are no female officers. And if they are, they're not getting paid the same amount as the male officers. Right? That much is cleared. So we have a picture here of a group of angry individuals, especially this one right here. She is just sour. Anyways, presumably these are some of the complainants for this complaint. Now you might be looking at this photo and saying, well, hold on a second. Well, who are those two dudes in the background? This guy and this guy. And how dare you assume their gender? Clearly, Zir here and Zur are gender fluid, non-binary, pansexual, non-heterosis-normative, gender-queer individuals. That's how they're part of this complaint, right? Because if they were men, then that might, create a flaw within their argument. Just saying. So Wendy Gillis here is the crime reporter for the Toronto Star. And I'm sure she's going to mention some of the discrepancies that I've just mentioned about this article, because clearly she is a nonpartisan journalist and wants to get right down to the bottom of this issue. So she writes, dozens of female Ontario Provincial Police civilian employees are alleging systemic gender-based discrimination by the province's largest police service, claiming they have for years been paid salaries far lower than their predominantly male uniformed police colleagues performing the same or comparable work. See, right there, that's where she addresses that inconsistency, because she says predominantly. So she acknowledges that there's female officers, but, because it's predominantly male, the patriarchy is clearly at work. A group of more than 80 OPP civilian managers and specialists have filed a human rights complaint claiming they are paid less than uniformed male officers, because there are no female officers, for similar work. They allege they have reduced access to benefits, promotions, less job security, and provided fewer professional development training opportunities. In addition, the group alleges they are too often the recipients of sexist comments and humiliating behavior, according to Janet Bowery, the lawyer representing the 84 civilian employees. Well, where do we start? So, promotions. Now, I don't know about you. I don't know how many... clearly, this is on behalf of 84 employees, and these are all managers, so they have people working underneath them. I don't know how many people work in the Human Resources Department or the IT Services or the Finance Department, let's say, of the OPP. I'm going to imagine that it's not within triple digits, right? I'd be surprised if it were. Now, my question would be, well, if you're a supervisor and you have, I don't know, maybe you have 10, 20 people, how many levels of managers do you need to manage those people, right? My point being is, how many promotions are you really going to get? Now, less job security, sure. I'm not too sure what the deal is with that. Maybe they do have less job security because they're not part of a union, which is really the crux of this. But they're provided fewer professional development and training opportunities. Well, I'll admit I'm not an IT person and I'm not a human resources or mechanic, but I gotta think that maybe the opportunities for professional training and development might be limited, because once you are in that position, how many refresher courses are you going to take for human resources on WSIB or whatever the case may be? Compared to police officers who are constantly having to update their training on things like mental health, because everyone wants cops to be psychiatrists these days, or use of force, because kind of part and parcel of the job, or sensitivity training because cops are nothing but fascist, goose-stepping Nazis, and they need to be trained to be kinder and gentler to, people who are not white. Cops are going to have more training, probably due to the nature of their job, I suspect. Okay, so they're also bitching about the deeply masculine Brothers in Blue work environment. Well, first things first. I want my police service that's out there patrolling the streets to be masculine. I'm sorry, I think most people would agree that you want a sort of a type A kind of, go get 'em type of masculine personality. And that's not to say that women can't be that, because of course they can. There are a lot of women that can, but do you want a more, let's say, feminine OPP, right? Of course, that's going to make everyone scream sexism and misogyny, and that's not my point. I'm saying you want that sort of type A Brothers in Blue kind of organization that is going to go out there and do what they got to do when shit hits the fan. Now, they say it's a men take care of men culture prevails. Well, because there's no women police officers, apparently. Right? There's no women of rank within the OPP. I mean, it couldn't possibly be a police take care of police organization. I think that would probably be the better term, and I'm not even saying that's the case. I'm not implying that they, just shit on the civilians and, send them back to their cubicles to slave for 14 hours a day. But does men take care of men culture? No. I think what you really mean is more like a police for police culture. But, you got to throw the men in there, right? Because after all, it is a human rights complaint. And so they say the police culture cannot be ignored in the context of systemic discrimination. What systemic discrimination are you facing? You have perhaps a lower pay scale. That is part of any work environment. You still haven't really shown any systemic discrimination, except the fact that the senior officers of the OPP, inspector up to commissioner, make different money than you do. And I wonder how many of these managers, I'm really curious, they don't say what they make, and I gotta find out. But, do they make a first-class constable's wage? How much do these people make? That's what I'd really like to know. Now, of course, the allegations are denied. They have to be denied. And they say that any workplace harassment is isolated and perpetuated by a small minority. And you know what? That's probably true. I think that's fair to say in most work environments these days, unless, of course, you're in Hollywood. But that's fucking Hollywood, and Hollywood's a world unto itself. Of course, they have zero tolerance for this. Yay, that's great. No discriminations occurred. The author of this, Wendy Gillis, says these people are compensated in line with comparable employees from within the Ontario Public Service. Sorry, that's Richards who says that, the spokesperson for the OPP. What I meant to say was Wendy Gillis here, if she was a good reporter, maybe she'd find out what comparable employees in the public sector within Ontario make. I would like to know. I think the readers of the article would like to know. The Human Rights Commission is definitely going to want to know. In some cases, a uniformed police officer may be paid more because he has specialized training in certain obligations under the Police Service Act. Yeah, well, see, here's the thing. There's the Police Service Act in Ontario, and that governs police in terms of what they can and can't do. And not only does it do that, it also penalizes police differently than a civilian would be penalized. And they can be charged under this act, right? It's not a criminal offense act. It's a provincial one. And they can be charged with all sorts of different things that civilians are not going to be charged with. They're not obligated to abide by this act. That's a pretty good reason as to why there might be a pay difference, right? The evidence will show civilian employees were not subjected to the same hiring procedures and they did not pass the same extensive training. Yeah, well, the training is going to be completely different. In one, you go to college, you get your HR degree or whatever it is, your IT degree, your computer science, whatever it is. In the other side, you're doing push-ups, running. Back in the day, you might have done some college, university. Now you're sure as shit doing college and university. On top of, the police training, as it were. There's different trainings and there's different hiring procedures. The civilian employees involved in the human rights case perform a variety of roles ranging from accounting and human resources. Yeah, I doubt they have. Maintenance of OPP property, such as its fleet of vehicles and weapons. So, what I want to know is how many inspectors of the OPP are also doing the accounting, or how many are supervising mechanics and getting under the hood of the car to fix some cruisers. Now, it says some of these jobs are considered hybrid, meaning they can be filled by a civilian or a police officer. However, the group alleges that the pay differential between civilians and officers performing equivalent or comparable work can be as high as 42%. So I'm going to suggest, this is what I think, is that these are administrative roles, right? Like roles that maybe don't take a certain kind of training, perhaps. Maybe they're more administrative and whatnot. Like, for instance, it makes me feel cheap, says Chief Victim Leanne McFarlane, a 10-year OPP employee who's a manager within the Career Development Bureau. The Career Development Bureau, well, that doesn't sound like a very specialized sort of field. So, whose career would the Career Development Bureau be overseeing most of the time? I'm going to go out on a limb and say other police officers. So yes, you could have a cop overseeing that. And it sounds to me like the OPP have determined, well, you don't really need a cop overseeing that because perhaps, I don't know, maybe it's more administrative. Maybe the civilian that oversees it doesn't really need to know anything about robberies or, I don't know, homicides or operations. I'm just throwing that out there. Maybe all it needs is someone to manage a few people to do some administrative stuff. Right? I mean, Chief Victim Leanne McFarlane here, she ain't going to be supervising cops in a homicide bureau. Anyways, McFarlane is also the president of the association representing the group Civilian Association of Managers and Specialists, formed in 2015 to address the fact they were not represented by a union, which I think is what this really boils down to. This human rights complaint is probably nothing more than to either get a pay bump, a cash grab, or to maybe force the OPP to let them be unionized. Now, according to documents filed, they're saying that unlike in Toronto, Ottawa, and London, the civilian managers and specialists within the OPP are not recognized by the police force as members of the Senior Officers Association. I don't know why it's only those three police services. There's a whole bunch in this province of Ontario. But of course, because three other people do it, then we got to do it too. I'm sure there's some sort of benefit to them. Now, of course, we get to the part of the article where we get to the example of the misogynist and the women-hating culture within the OPP. And they had a meeting of the Ontario Associations of Chiefs of Police. During the dinner portion, a female civilian OPP was allegedly cajoled by her mostly male colleagues, which suggests there's some female colleagues cajoling her, but, clearly internalized misogyny was why they did that, and they are not mentioned within this article. Not realizing she was about to be asked to participate in a German handshake in front of the audience. Oh no, there's going to be a joke, and it's going to be a saucy little joke. The game involved putting her hand inside the pants or lederhosen of a male actor and vigorously shaking the hand of another woman through the front pocket of his pants. Oh my God. Many in attendance took photos, said the employee, Amanda Weaver, who works as a coordinator of the Respectful Workplace program within the OPP. Of course she does. Now, the way this article and the way they're wording this, it makes it sound as if this dude's got a hole in his pants and these two ladies are just being asked to give him a tug right there in his pants. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this supposed hole was probably not much more than some fabric creating like a pocket of some sort, and that their hands did not come into contact with Buddy's junk. It was just a separate pocket outside the front of his pants, and it looked saucy and oh so dirty. But hey, we need the example of the women-hating culture within the OPP for this article, right? It just wouldn't be a star article without it. So, of course, among the remedies the civilian employees are seeking is a declaration that the treatment of the group constitutes systemic discrimination, and an order directing that the compensation structure be applied equally to all employees. So, they want the same salaries as the inspectors, all the way upwards to, I guess, the commissioner. I don't know, it doesn't say, but I don't think so. This is not systemic discrimination. This is simply two different pay scales for two different sets of employees who are hired under two different circumstances and qualifications, and quite frankly, two different careers. Anyways, it'll be interesting to see. Starts back up in April, and I'm looking forward to another informative article from the Toronto Star explaining some of the discrepancies, which they didn't explain in this article. But whatever.